Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to replace the carburetor kit in a Jonsered 2071 chainsaw. It's going to be the exact same procedure if you have a Husqvarna 365 chainsaw with a Walbro carburetor. Some symptoms that your chainsaw may have if your carburetor kit is bad is that it's really hard to adjust the carburetor properly. You may not also be able to throttle up fully. The saw may die when you go to do that. And overall, it's just not going to run properly. And it may also be hard to start. And here's the saw. It's an older saw. It's a 1997. And here's the tag on the saw. Apparently this saw has never been serviced. It's the original carburetor kit. It doesn't quite run as well as it should, so the owner wants me to go through it and replace necessary parts. So I'm going to replace the carburetor kit to make sure it runs better and that it continually runs better as well. And also, before it goes back to the customer, it's going to be all cleaned up. To get started on this procedure, I'm going to remove the two clips over here, or actually just disengage them. And now just part of the cover will come off. Next, I'm going to remove the air filter. Just bring up the pin and then pull up. Now at this point, you need to remove the screws that hold on this black plastic cover that goes over the cylinder. So there are 3 screws altogether, one here, one there, and one on the other side. As you can see, I've already loosened them up. So they're not actually going to come right out, they're just going to be loosened. You want to leave them inside this black cover so you do not lose the screws. Now you can lift up the black plastic cover. What I'm going to do now is throttle up the saw like this and just hold it there. And now hold the throttle mechanism here on the carb. The cable's coming up, so I'm just going to run the cable out through here so that it's disconnected. Now I'm going to disconnect the impulse line. And I'm also going to disconnect the fuel line here from the carburetor. You can tell this one's been on for quite a while. Now I'm going to disconnect the choke knob here from the carburetor. And to remove it from the carburetor over here, you want to squeeze the 2 little tabs. And while they're squeezed, you can just push it out with the screwdriver. Now you're going to need a small Allen wrench to remove the 2 carburetor bolts. And they're located right over here. There's one here and one inside over here. I'm just going to pull out the bolts now with some needle nose pliers. This will make it easier to remove the carburetor. Now lift the carb up, and that's it. Now you can remove the boot from the screws. Now at this point, I'm going to air blow all the dirt off the carburetor. Make sure to wear your safety glasses if you do this. By the way, this is a Walbro carburetor and it's a model HD, and here are the model numbers of this actual carburetor. This is the information that you need when you go to buy a carburetor kit for your carb. Now I'm going to take the carburetor apart. I'm going to start with the metering cover. There's just 4 screws on this side. Now I'm going to pull the diaphragm and the gasket right off. And it looks pretty clean inside the carburetor, which is good. Now on this side of the carb, there's just 1 screw holding the cover and it's on pretty tight. This is the pump diaphragm on this side. And you can see a bit of dirt in there. But again, this saw has never been serviced since it was bought. So now I'm just going to wipe it up a bit. Use a nice cotton rag to do this. So overall, the carburetor looks really clean. I don't think I'm going to have to do any cleaning work today on this carb. Now the kit I'm going to need today is a Walbro K10 HD carb kit. If you have a Zama carburetor on your saw, it's going to be a totally different carburetor kit. And here's the kit up close, K10 HD. Always make sure your diaphragms are at the bottom of the bag before you cut it open. Now this kit here will include all the hardware, the needle valve, the screen, and all the other parts to do a complete carburetor rebuild. You can also buy a carburetor kit, it's called D10 HD. But it will not have the hardware. In many cases, all you need is a D10 HD carb kit, but because this saw has never really been serviced, I'm putting a full carburetor rebuild kit in the carb. So I've got all my parts laid out here, and I'm going to take off the needle valve from the carburetor here, which I'm going to be replacing. Now I'm just going to loosen this screw over here. I usually do not take it all off. Now as you can see, the parts are coming up. And make sure you don't lose that spring because it is not included in the carburetor kit. And again, do an inspection to make sure everything's clean. Especially you want to make sure this hole here is clean. Now I'm going to flip it over, and with a good pick I'm going to remove the screen here. Sometimes these can look clean, but they're actually varnicized in fuel and they're totally plugged. So even if it looks clean, make double sure it is by either replacing it or blowing it through it, especially if you're only using the D10 HD carb kit. And again, this carburetor is nice and clean. You can give it a little air blow with your compressor air. If it's really dirty, you can use carburetor cleaner. And I'm going to start by reinstalling the screen. Just going to stick it in here like this. And what I've got here is a 1/4 inch drill bit. I'm using the backhand, and I'm just going to try to push the screen in there nice and evenly. You don't want it going in crooked because it's not going to serve any purpose. Now in the carb kit there's 2 gaskets for the pump cover. One's made of rubber, the other of cardboard. This one is thicker, the cardboard one here. Since it already had a cardboard gasket, this is the one I'm going to use. I'm not exactly sure why they put 2 of them in the kit. Now I'm just going to line up the gasket on the cover, and now I'm going to put the actual pump diaphragm on here. As you can see, it lines up with these little pins here. Now line it up on the carburetor, make sure the diaphragm stays where it is. And you want to find where the little pins will lock in. So as you can see, I can't move the cover, so it's in the proper position. Now you can reinstall the screw. Now I don't have the torque specs, but it has to be fairly tight, but just don't overdo it. Now on this side of the carburetor there's a bit of dirt or gasket material left, so all I'm going to use today is a 400 grit emery sandpaper to clean that off. All you have to do is lightly sand it and make sure to keep the debris away from the inside of the carb. Now at this point you want to grab the carburetor spring, put that in there, and I'm also going to drop the needle valve right in the hole. Again, make sure to keep the spring upright. And now I've got the pin inside the needle lever, and I'm going to put it in. One tip is don't be in a rush when doing this because it can be frustrating. Now I'm just going to bring this down, line it up in here. And tighten up that screw as soon as you can. Because if you don't, that's when things can come apart again on you, especially the small spring underneath. So I'm just going to put this fairly tight. Now for the adjustment of the lever, usually when it's flush with the carb, it's pretty good. I'm just going to check it like this quickly. Usually I have really good success at this setting. If you find it's too low, then you'd have to pry it up. If it's too high, you'd have to hold the backhand and pry it down. Now I'm going to reinstall the gasket. Put the gasket first. And now put the metering diaphragm on. As you can see, it only lines up in one position. And now I'm going to put the plate back on. And now you want to put the 4 screws back on. And now basically just snug the screws, but crisscross so that you tighten up the cover evenly. Now that they're snug, I'm going to tighten them all up. Again, they have to be fairly tight, but do not overdo it. And that's good. The carburetor is rebuilt, ready to be put back on. But before I put it back on, I'm going to count the turns on the screws here. This is the H screw. So I'm going to turn it in all the way, counting the turns. Half a turn, 3/4 of a turn. So I put it back the way it is. Half a turn, 1 turn, 1 3/4. So there. Now I'm going to stick it back on and try it out, If there's more issues, I'm going to readjust the carburetor. Usually when I do a carb rebuild kit, I usually do have to readjust the carburetor. Just a quick tip before you put the carburetor back on, you can run your finger inside the intake boot to feel for any cracks. If you feel any cracks, replace the boot immediately because your saw will not run properly. The first thing I'm going to do is turn the choke on the carburetor. Makes it easier to put it in here. Now I'm going to connect the impulse line over here. And what I'm going to do with the fuel line today is just snip off about 1/4 inch, just so it goes tighter on the carburetor connector. Now you can install the carburetor bolts, just line up all the holes. So you just want to line everything up here. And the second one goes over here. So you may have to wiggle all the parts and the carburetor just to get all the holes lined up so the screw goes in. And now you want to tighten up both bolts evenly. So I'm going to snug one side. I'm going to tighten up this side now. And then repeat the process over here. I always hold the carb so it doesn't put any pressure on the intake boot. Now I'm going to reconnect the throttle cable. I'm just basically going to bring the lever down like this or up. And now all I have to do is line up the cable through the groove and let it go. And I'm going to reattach the choke knob. So line it up to the hole and then just push in. It's going to clip in there. I'm just going to double check that everything's working. As you can see, the choke butterfly is moving, and when you press the throttle trigger, it releases the choke so it opens up again. Before I start it up, I'm going to put the air filter back on. And I am going to leave the black cover off for now because it is winter time here, it is cold, and I will not be running it for too long like this. I just want to make sure everything runs good before I finish off the assembly and clean it all up. Also note that this saw has a decompression valve here, so I'm going to take advantage of that today. I'm going to start it up, try it out in a few logs, and hopefully the settings are pretty good for it. So I'm really glad with the outcome. All I did with the screws is turned out the H screw just a bit to give it more throttle. It wouldn't really go full throttle at first, but as soon as I turned it out maybe 1/8 of a turn, everything went up. And also I gave approximately 1/8 of a turn more on the low screw, and everything's good. Don't run your saw too long without the black cover. I just did this to try it out quickly. Now I'm going to put everything back on and she'll be ready to go. Also, I'm going to be cleaning all the dirt around the saw here in the cylinder, because if you have too much dirt on the cylinder, it will be harder to cool it down. So as you can see, it's not that hard to replace a carburetor kit in a chainsaw. Maybe you can do it yourself by following this video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and you'll see me in my next video. Have a nice day.